And joining me now from Chicago to discuss the DOJ's new lawsuit is attorney Todd Belcourt. He's also co-founder of the nonprofit organization Social Change. Attorney Belcourt, welcome back to BNC. It's good to have you with us.
It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
We appreciate your time tonight. So it's just been about 24 hours since Attorney General Merrick Garland announced the Justice Department's lawsuit against the state of Georgia. What impact could this lawsuit have?
It means everything. Having the opportunity to be on the ground in Georgia, in Cherokee County, Hall County, Cobb County, on behalf of Social Change and work alongside so many organizations to get our Black and brown communities out to vote. It's hard to really put into words the ways in which these laws cause real pain. They're not just an attack on our democracy, they're an attack on people. And you try to provide some sort of corollary, some sort of analogy. If I told you some head of state, whether it be Putin or the president of Venezuela, was doing things, engaging in practices that threaten to intimidate, to even change the laws to make sure the likely voters, where people are likely to vote for them, you would call that system of government a dictatorship, or at best a corrupt democracy. But that's what's taking place right here on American soil in Georgia, Florida, and so many other places. And it's right that the Department of Justice is doing something about it to ensure that our Black and brown voices will not be disenfranchised and silenced.
Do you think this is kind of just the start of a number of lawsuits that we'll see in the future about this?
It is a start, because at the end of the day, this is a continuation of the wrong kind of American legacy. This is a continuation of the policies of Governor George Wallace, the same George Wallace who said segregation now, segregation forever. Just because it doesn't say Black people can't vote in the letter of the law does not mean there's not a very specific and distinct discriminatory intent embedded in these laws. These laws were a direct response to successful Black and brown engagement strategies. Black and brown people are coming out in record numbers voting on Sundays after church.
Yep.
So these laws make it so you can't vote on Sundays. Black and brown people are coming out in record numbers to certain polling sites. So these laws make it so those polling sites are no longer available. Black and brown people are willing to wait and go through hell in these long lines that you've now created, as long as they get a chance to get a little water, some food, maybe even something to protect them from the rain. But now that's illegal. So now these are illegal activities, the basic human practice of providing water or food to our neighbors. And that means that sheriffs, police officers will now be inundating the polls. And who wants to actually have to survive and go through a gauntlet of law enforcement with all that we see in the news about how we're being killed, even for sleeping and just eating ice cream on our own couches, just to vote? So these are intimidation tactics. These are threatening tactics. These are tactics to change laws to impact the number of Black and brown people to come out. They are a violation of law, and I hope the Department of Justice does something about them as soon as possible so it doesn't impact any outcomes of any elections.
Yeah, I mean, you said some very interesting things there. And, you know, some of the Georgia state lawmakers aren't backing down from supporting the changes they've made, even though, like you said, it's a distraction for what Black people were trying to do in the first place, and that was get their votes counted. So you talk about some of the state's new election rules. Do federal prosecutors have a tough road ahead to prove their case?
You know, since so many of these actual provisions within these laws were a direct response to efforts to get the vote out for Black and brown communities, I think the intent can be divined. You don't have to wait for the impact to take place if it's something that can be presupposed and extrapolated. But I also think you have to consider the pain that and the hardship this causes on people just right now, knowing that they live in a country where even now, after all these years, so many steps are being taken to make sure their voices are silenced. And you can say, yes, well, just push through it and vote no matter what. You're also discounting the fact that we're also enduring a once in 100-year pandemic, which means people haven't even voted in the last cycles oftentimes because they didn't want to risk exposing themselves to this virus that will kill themselves and others. But that also means, based on some of these laws, that they were no longer even eligible to vote. So you'd be told you can't vote where you used to vote. You're told you can't even have water or food where you go. And now you're even told by the time you endure all that, going through law enforcement and everything else, every sort of obstacle, that you're not even eligible and allowed to vote any longer because you didn't vote because of the pandemic. These are sorts of extreme measures that are being taken to maintain power. And that's why this isn't just an attack on democracy. This is an attack on people. This is corruption. This is dictatorship. And I'm glad the Department of Justice is trying to do something about it. We've been fighting and having protests outside the Capitol in Georgia and multiple locations for months and months now. Even businesses have been speaking out. It's time for the federal government to do their part.
And Todd, with this lawsuit, someone will have to defend these changes, right, to the law. What legal arguments would you expect that attorney to make?
Well, the focus on the fact that these policies are race neutral. It doesn't say explicitly that black people can't vote, brown people can't vote. But for the very same reasons I articulated, these are explicit and direct responses to successful get out the vote strategies for black and brown communities. And they're also tantamount to threatening, intimidating, coercing, and changing laws, going through extreme measures to make it impossible for some of our seniors to vote, impossible for some of our disabled community members to vote, impossible for some of our working families to vote. And any policies that are doing that certainly aren't democratic, and they certainly aren't consistent with the Voting Rights Act. So discrimination is clear in these cases. Just the question is, will these cases be resolved in time for it to have an impact on these upcoming elections? And how will the Supreme Court, given its current composition, really analyze the underlying laws and the arguments and create little carve-outs to allow some states to do some of these sort of nefarious things, but still ensure that our votes aren't widely abridged as they are currently based on the laws that have passed.
Well, one thing I know about black and brown folks is that they won't be silenced, Todd. So we thank you for your time.
That's
we appreciate you weighing in on this for us tonight. And we'll see you when we have you back.
Thank you. Appreciate it. God bless you.
You too.